we need to.
Are you going to
But
sit in for the whole session, John, or are you going to go off and do something?
oh no, I'll be around.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, anyways, this is Denise Woolard. She was an MLA during the last sitting, during the last cycle of elections in Mill Creek, right, Denise?
Yep.
And she was part of the wave, and then she didn't get the nomination, and is moving to Pigeon Lake, right? You're moving to Pigeon Lake, right? That's the plan. But
What's
she
that?
has you've moved to Pigeon Lake from Edmonton.
Well, near Wabamun.
Near Wabamun, yeah. Anyway, she can tell us all about the dirty little secrets now that she's no longer in power. Maybe Alexandria and Gina and John will be politicians in 20 years or 10 years or maybe 2 years.
Excellent. So when should I start?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got into politics quite late. I had been a teacher for over 30 years. I'd been an educational psychologist for another 10 years. So how I got into politics is I had been interested in politics, and so I knew a fair bit about it. And then I happened to kind of stumble upon, I think it was the campaign in I can't even remember now for sure, maybe 2007, 2008. I stumbled upon a campaign office, and I think it was for Linda Duncan, who was running to be a member of parliament. And I decided to volunteer because campaigns always need volunteers. Everything in politics needs volunteers. And I really got involved, and I met lots of wonderful people. I did the door knocking. I saw how important all of that was. So I really started learning about what actually is happening, the beginnings of what's happening with politics. It's not just all the nice things that are written and the policies on paper. It's all the going out, talking to people, and making sure people understand what it is you're trying to do. So that was wonderful. And then when Linda Duncan won, and that was the first time she had run for an MP, and that was really exciting. So I thought, okay, this is very successful. If you want to be involved in politics, it's a good way to start. You're jumping in, but you're finding out a lot of things right quickly, and you're meeting a lot of wonderful people, like-minded people. Eventually, you're going to want to buy a party membership so that you can vote at conventions and things and find out more about the party. And you just can keep on going. I wound up the next year, within a couple of months, volunteering another campaign, and that was for Rachel Notley in the same constituency, Edmonton Strathcona. And again, it was exciting, and learned a lot, found out what was going on. So I kept on volunteering. I became a member of constituency associations, and I volunteered, I door knocked, helped fundraise. When anybody was putting on a fundraising activity, I would be able to help, because that was something I was good at doing as being a teacher. I was good at volunteering at different things like that. And eventually, after a number of years of that, I was asked to let my name stand to be a candidate. And that was up in one of the constituencies in Fort McMurray. And at that time, I was doing a lot of work up in Northern Alberta as an educational psychologist. So I knew some people up there, and I was very interested in doing it. Now, two things you have to remember. I was just jumping in at the last minute to let my name stand. So I had no constituency association. I had no money for signs or anything else. I had no staff. But it was very exciting. I had some very dedicated people up in the area who were willing to do everything they could to help. I had people who bought signs for me and put them up, and that was great. I also found it wonderful practice. Keep this in mind. I was able to learn how to do a TV interview. I did radio interviews, and that was great. I had some people from the radio in Fort McMurray who started calling me on a fairly regular basis. We were on first name basis, and that was fantastic, to ease the stress level and the anxiety level. I also was able to go to a candidates forum in Fort McMurray and met some of the other candidates and got to know how to a little bit more practice at thinking on my feet. I mean, you do that as a teacher, but it's with children. This is with grown-ups. So it was great. So that was 2012. I didn't, like I said, I was unlikely to win. I didn't win, but it was great. In 2015, so I kept on volunteering, by the way. In 2015, I let my name stand as a candidate for a constituency in Edmonton. That was Edmonton Mill Creek. I still had no money for being a candidate or time. I was working as a university facilitator at that time, supervising student teachers. And their practicums finished 5 days before the election, and I had all these reports to write up. So you can imagine how much extra time I had, none. But luckily, various other candidates let me meet with people in their offices, and I had a phone. Everybody's got a phone. And because I was part of the wave, I won. So there you go. All of a sudden now, after all these years of being in the side stage as being the person who's the stand-in for the main star, all of a sudden I'm up there. Now we get to the nitty-gritty of being a politician here, and I'm not going to go into detail because it's mostly kind of the boring stuff. You get sworn in, so you have to say that you're going to fulfill the duties of a member of the Legislative Assembly in Alberta. You get orientation, and this is like in school, in university orientation, they tell you all the little bits of things. You're not going to remember everything, but if you keep the booklet, you're pretty good. And then finally, finding a constituency office and finding out what staff is needed. Now, excuse me, this is tricky because you should inherit the previous MLA's office, right? That makes it easy. You've got the furniture, you've got the office, they give you the key, away you go. But my former MLA, Gene Strodesky, his office had been expropriated by the city to build the LRT through. So that was out. All the furniture was put into storage. So the first 6 months of being an MLA, I tried to find an office. And it turned out we were in the middle of a building boom in Edmonton, Mill Creek, pardon me. I'm getting places mixed up. So I spent a long time looking for an available office that didn't cost quite an arm and a leg. We don't pay for it. The MLA doesn't pay the rent for the offices. The Alberta legislature does, the government of Alberta, but you try to find one that's not extremely expensive. So eventually I found one. And again, in the meantime, kind other MLAs let me use parts of their office for meetings with people. So we're jumping ahead 6 months in. I've learned how to be an MLA in the legislature, where you sit, what you do. There's, of course, lots of rules. And I've got a constituency is that you're part of a caucus. Now, whether you're in the government or in the opposition, your caucus is all the people who are elected in your party, and they meet together as a group pretty regularly, and they have to make sure they're all on the same page. So it's really important when a bill is brought up, everybody in your caucus needs to be a part of getting that bill through the House, getting it voted on, and having the motion become a bill. And this is called caucus cohesion, or caucus solidarity. And this is really important because if you get elected as a member of your party, you are reasonably enough expected to be a member, as in a supporting voting member of your party. If you have a difference of opinion, these are bound to come along. Everybody has differences of opinion here and there. If you have a difference of opinion with your caucus, then this is when you need to talk to people in your caucus staff, or the leader of the party. In our case, that would be the premier, and to try to get the differences resolved. So Caucus meetings are exclusively for the MLAs in that caucus and the staff. So these aren't public meetings. By the way, if you're going to ask, well, what happens if you really violently differ in opinion from the caucus thoughts? There's two things that can happen there. You can, if it's really something you can't support in good conscience, you can abstain, but you do need to let people know that you're going to abstain so it's not a blindsiding of your party. And in some cases, there are people who find that their views start differing dramatically from the parties, and sometimes those people will choose to leave and sit as an independent. Sitting as an independent, well, it gives you freedom to vote and talk about things and however you like. It also means that you are on your own. You are not going to be able to get a motion through. You may try, and you may make a difference in the legislature, but you really have very little influence. So every party has its own party platform, its policy platform, and it outlines the party's goals. So you've got a pretty good idea when you get elected what your party is going to be wanting to achieve. It's not a surprise. So in addition to being in the legislature and just sitting there and talking about motions and bills that go through and voting on them and listening to other people's talks, you also get a chance to, this is something I found really interesting. Every member gets a chance on a pretty fair rotation to make a member statement in the House. This is a 2-minute. You've got 2 minutes of time to speak on anything you like. Now, obviously, you're going to speak usually on things that are things your party favors, but it's also a really good opportunity to speak about things that are dear to your heart. So, you know, I might speak about some politician of the past. I did, as a matter of fact, speak about politicians of the past that I was really impressed with. I spoke about the first female MLA in Alberta, Roberta McAdam, who was a very interesting person. So, you know, you have the opportunity then to talk about things that are important. Oh, and you can speak about things that are important to people in your constituency. I spoke about Navratri, which most people wouldn't know about, but it's an important festival for the Gujarati culture. And there are a number of Gujarati associations in Mill Creek. In addition to that, you get to be on committees. Now, committees oversee various areas of government. One committee I was on for the full 4 years was the Standing Committee on Legislative Offices. The legislative offices are the people like the Auditor General, the Child and Youth Advocate, the Elections Commissioner, all those various groups, and the Ethics Commissioner, and so on. And this committee oversees their work. So you get a report from them once a year, or a couple times a year. You get a chance to ask questions and look at their budgets. And it's really interesting. You get to really appreciate the work that goes on in the various areas. Another committee I was on for several years was the Standing Committee on Resource Stewardship, which I found really interesting, and I learned so much more about resource stewardship regulations in Alberta. So I'm going on, but these are some of the things you do, and these are all legislative activities. Then on the other side, the other half of your life is working in the constituency. So you work with the groups of people, you go to events, you help people sort out problems they may be having with the government. You act as, if you can, as a notary public. So when people want to come and get visas for family members to come visit, you can help them get that done. You have to get volunteers arranged for all the activities that you're doing meanwhile in the constituency, like you have to do fundraising and door knocking, so you need volunteers. And that brings me to rewards and challenges, which was the topic of my conversation. And I think you probably gathered by this time that the rewarding part of this, of being an MLA, was really all the people that I met, all the people I got to know from all the different backgrounds, both in the legislature and in the constituency, other MLAs, and learning new things all the time in and out of the constituency, learning how government actually works and helping to achieve government goals. The challenges were sometimes having to fit my own personal beliefs and inclinations into kind of a larger picture, figure out how to do that, and handling the demands of the job and staying calm and frustrated. There's frustration sometimes. You have goals, things you'd like to do, but you maybe are not going to get the chance to do them all. Now, I've burbled on for a while. Does anybody have any questions? Or Austin, any other things that I might speak about you'd like me to?
Well, we only have about 5 minutes left, but
Okay.
Alexandra or Gina, do you have any questions? Just unmute. Or Peter?
I hope it wasn't too boring. It really is interesting. I encourage everybody to get involved in politics in whatever way you can. I mean, it affects us all.
You know, we can't really complain in a democracy, which we still do live in, whatever anybody says.
Yes.
We live in a democracy, you know, that unless you volunteer and participate, you really can't complain about the results. We can still complain, but, you know, like you have to participate in. It's possible to really have an influence on, as I found in my career, I've had influences on conservatives, even UCP. I've said comments that Chandro has yelled at me about, and you know, like.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. You got Chandro to yell at you.
Yeah, I was about schizophrenia. He didn't like what I was saying. How schizophrenics were medicated. It's complicated. I won't go into it, but it was pretty weird. And then so it wasn't surprising he yelled later. So
yeah.
It was just. But basically, you just have to volunteer, and I'm very enthusiastic. Like if you're just stuck in a place where you're not doing anything or whatever, volunteer. You might be able to get a job with an MLA. They're always looking for people.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. Also, what you said about knowing different politicians from different stripes. Like I got to know Dennis Sanderson, who had been a PC MLA through the mental health activities I was involved in. And you know, he was a very interesting and very capable person. So party lines aren't that rigid.
No, people think it's like all about like, you know, UCP are rigid, but unless they're like, you know, like imbeciles, they won't like, unless they're idiots, they'll listen to the other side just to figure out what they're saying. Like, you know what I mean, Denise?
Yeah.
They want to know what the NDP is saying and the Conservatives are saying. And it's, and the thing about, do you want to take the dog to the back, James? Is that politicians want information.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they want. So when you go in, tell them information, tell them perspectives, tell them your ideas. Like, for example, like about the CSJ and youth things, I'm not so sure Trudeau didn't challenge some of the stuff I told Paula Simons and Michael Kirby, Senator Michael Kirby, Senator Simons, because they quoted me stuff I told them. They were taking notes, and it was pretty weird. I thought, are they actually using what I said and what Trudeau's saying? And maybe they did. Maybe somebody came up with it independently. But it can be a really big thrill when politicians actually implement policy about you. You're not going to necessarily earn money from it, but it's a really big thrill to know that you're influencing society.
Exactly. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And, so basically, I have to go. Unless, do you have any? You have to ask a question, Gina or Alexandra.
Ask me a question.
I just have a question more about the volunteering. Just what those positions kind of look like, and if there's positions now, or if it's more just around election time.
Oh, there's volunteer opportunities all the time. Whatever constituency you live in, that's, you know, if you go into the office and ask if you can help out with something, they'll find something for you. And of course, it's like anything else, you know, if you do it a few times, you get to know some other people and you can get quite involved. As involved as you want to, little or lot.
Well,
Does that
anyway,
make sense?
Yeah. So Gina,
Yeah.
do you have one last question?
I guess something I'm curious about is just if there are any moments, Denise, that stand out for you that you remember and kind of make you think, oh, this is why like I get involved, or this is why I signed up to be involved in politics.
There were a few times in the legislature when I really felt very proud of what we were doing when we got some bills passed. I know one thing we really worked hard on was getting GSAs in schools and getting that settled in, and I felt very proud of that. That was wonderful. There's several other things, but that was the big one.
Do you have a question, Peter or John? Sorry.
Yeah.
Your identity.
No worries. Yeah. So I just had a question about like some of the really big like polarizations that can occur. So you probably have encountered some like super hard-nosed types of politicians as well. Could you describe like any of your experiences where you felt that it was like a little bit challenging to get points across, and what you did in that situation?
That's a really good point. There's several politicians on the UCP side that I've had contact with like over years, and had very little feeling that there was any understanding or any comprehension going both ways. I would make a point. One politician I know would argue absolutely vehemently for certain points, and then he'd turn around a week later and go the opposite way. That was very frustrating.
Wow.
I felt like I didn't know where this person was. I mean, I won't name names, but it was very frustrating. I'm not sure how you get through to somebody who like that. You keep working on it, I guess.
Yeah, and also, you know, we've had one student, Spencer Dunn. This is a long time ago, in the early 2000s, who ran for the Liberal Party, and he was just graduated, and so he ran as one of the parachute candidates, like you did for McMurray, and he found it very exciting. I was very encouraging of him. And it's something that, you know, you can participate in. It can be very exciting. You're not. I wouldn't look at it as a cost-benefit analysis, but something of service, and it can be. It can help you. I've known people that have got jobs with the government and stuff, and who knows? Maybe the NDP will get in power in a few years. You know, like the way things are going. You know, it's entirely possible. I think, like. People say, "Oh, that's not possible." That's not possible, but it's entirely possible. And
Exactly.
you never know in politics.
No, you never do. I was going to mention one thing that just inspired me. That's right. When I won the election and defeated Gene Składecki, which was a surprise for both of us, he was so gracious. He kept phoning up to see if he could help me with anything. He put on a practice session in the legislature for all the new MLAs, and he supported me in every way he could. It was really impressive.
And it can be a positive thing. Well, we better go. I have a therapy session in 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I really enjoyed this. Hope it was useful.
Okay, thank you.